There was much to theorize from the 2 or 3 pieces of drip marketing for the 2.4 character Lupa. I had a whole research script written arguing that the new Sentinel symbol would actually be the next major region for 3.0, rather than Septimont. I was going to argue that the region would be based on Middle Eastern themes due to the griffin, which potentially originates from the Near or Middle East, as well as what sounds like a tar in Lupa's Anthropomorphine animation. I also wanted to posit that the region would be fusion based on the dual imagery of the sun and moon in the symbol, as well as the fused nature of a griffin itself. However, with the release of this beautiful preview special record, City of Glory, I think we can confidently say that much of the imagery from the new Sentinel symbol is echoed in the architecture of this new city Septimont. But that is the exciting aspect of theory crafting lore, where I originally thought a new Sentinel symbol meant a whole new region, based on how the previous symbols were all tied to the names of the regions rather than the major cities within those regions, such as Ragusa for Renacida and Jinzhou for Huanglong. Now I look at it in a different way. Of course, each city will need their own Sentinel symbol if they each have their own Sentinel. My only issue with this is there are going to be a lot of upcoming symbols. Within Huanglong alone, there are 7 major cities, which would then suggest 7 Sentinels and 7 symbols. Another reason I thought this couldn't be a new major region with its own story arc and new Sentinel was that this is 2.4. Based on our previous versions, 2.4 would be the final version in the 2.x series. However, this may be another deviation from established patterns, such as the Sentinel symbol being associated directly with the city rather than the region. Perhaps we will be exploring the city of Septimont and its surrounding areas for the next 4 to 5 versions, fleshing out Renacida before moving to a new region. Based on the 5 teased characters from the special record City of Glory video, I believe it should be clear we will have at least 3 upcoming versions, but it is more likely to extend to 4. 3 to 4 additional patches in Renacida would put us roughly at the start of 2026, when the new region could be released, like Renacida did at the beginning of 2025. Despite my theories being sunk beneath the dark tide that is Kuro Games strip marketing, I do want to briefly analyze the new symbol, as I find symbolism very interesting. I feel this symbol has 4 major aspects of sub-imagery. First, let's look at the Sentinel itself. What creature is it? For those not versed in mythological creatures, like me, as I was confused at first, the Griffin, Hippogriff, and Sphinx are all different creatures, although they are somewhat similar at first glance. A Sphinx has the head of a human, so we can exclude that creature. Hippogriffs have the body or rear of a horse. Here are subject to sitting, something a horse does not usually do. Plus, we just had a horse, so let's drop that too. That leaves us with the Griffin, based on this texture around the throat, which looks somewhat like a lion's mane. I believe we can confidently conclude it is a griffin. The second aspect of sub-imagery is that the griffin is holding a flag. This evokes a sense of leadership and potentially militarism. Perhaps the country is in an eternal struggle and strife. Next, behind the griffin we can see a sun. The sun was mentioned as the symbol or to be associated with one of the upcoming characters. And it can be difficult to see at first, but there also appears to be a full moon overlaying the sun behind the griffin's head, which creates what looks like a solar eclipse. This may invoke a sense of balance or fusion between opposing or complement forces. The final aspect of this symbol is what appears to be a compass, with the cardinal and ordinal directions pointing between the sun's flares. This may evoke a sense of guidance, a similar aspect to Renacida's lighthouse motif that we saw for Ragusa. I'm unsure if guidance, direction, orientation will be a consistent aspect of the Sentinel symbols, since I can't rationalize one in Huanglong's symbol, as it's just a dragon. Although, in ancient China, a dragon could be considered an auspicious sign, so maybe we can spin that as a guiding orienting symbol in itself. But now, let's discuss what I think about Lupa. First, what do I feel is the origin of the name Lupa? The first thing that came to mind when I heard the name Lupa, coupled with Colosseum, was the story of the she-wolf Lupa that raised Romulus and Remus, two legendary individuals who would later go on to found Rome. And I believe this is consistent with Septimont's Rome theme. However, Lupa might not be her birth name. Rather, it may be a moniker attributed to her as the star gladiator of Septimont. She likely earned it based on her fighting style, if it is a moniker. Let's discuss what about her I don't connect with or have reservations about before we talk about the positives. First, her special polearm. This polearm looks amazing. I absolutely adore it. However, I'm not sure how I feel about special versus basic weapons. As we've seen with Shikona, her basic weapon is basically nowhere to be seen. And so, if I pull a signature weapon, will I ever enjoy what it looks like? That being said, if most of the kit uses her special weapon, it still allows players who don't pull the weapon to enjoy her quote-unquote complete design, which I do appreciate. I sincerely hope she is not a negative status character. While I am excited that the elements have more purpose to them now, I have my reservations regarding the current negative status system, but I will not go into that here. I will say that I doubt she will be the negative status character, because if Lupa is a DPS, I doubt her to be a negative status character, as the negative status characters require their batteries, such as Phoebe and Shiakona, to be released before their DPSs, like Zani and Carthea. However, if she properly batteries herself, she could be released, and if she is the battery and is not a main DPS but rather a sub DPS, that is very possible that she is still a negative status character. Now, let's resume positivity and break down her fit and speculate on her kit. Regarding her general outfit, well, what she wears looks like a battle suit, which is cool. Her armor, I have very limited knowledge in this area. However, it gives a clear sense of battle with the bracers and the chest piece, as well as some ornamentation in the medallions that she wears. Regarding her polearm, again, as I mentioned, I love polearms, especially standards, which are essentially polearms with flags or symbols at the top. And where Lupa initially gave a sense of DPS when I first saw her splash art, the fact that she carries a standard gives off a sense of a leader or AoE buffing type character, like a Joan of Arc, which leads me to consider her being fusion and what role she might occupy in the current meta. Fusion currently is in need of a limited hyper DPS, with 2 limited sub DPSs categorized by their outro skills, giving Fusion plus a damage type buff. Fusion is needing a limited DPS for the simple, straightforward hyper carry gameplay I enjoy. If she is a DPS, then that might suggest that the Sentinel's Resonator of the new region will actually be a general support instead of a DPS like the last 2 have been. Hopefully. Alternatively, she could be a more Teffy-like character, but buffing Fusion and basic attack damage, perhaps being a good fit for Encore, or Fusion and heavy attack damage, in preparation for potentially the upcoming Sentinel's Resonator. In which case, the Fusion Sentinel Resonator will be a DPS again. Based on the tease characters, I am leaning more in this direction for Lupa, being a sub-DPS buffer, with perhaps the Sentinel Resonator being the character associated with the Sun, which we saw in the special preview, who looks to perhaps wield a greatsword and thus likely do heavy attack damage. Speaking of the Sun character, I wanted to briefly mention how much their sword reminds me of the Grafted Blade greatsword from Elden Ring. We know there is some inspiration from Elden Ring and Wuthering Waves, so I wonder if the history of the Grafted Blade owner would be an inspiration for the Sun's lore. The sword's lore reads, A lone surviving champion from a country now vanished was so determined to continue fighting that he claimed the swords of an entire clan of warriors. In the opening of the special record, City of Glory, we see Septimont's symbol beneath the waves, so perhaps much of the Sun's clan was obliterated by the first or second Dark Tides, and now they choose to continue fighting for them. Now, if we go back to Lupa, something I missed at first glance on her splash art is this two-toned fire. I'm curious to see what this means. As we can see here, blue flames are hotter than yellow and red flames. So perhaps she has an enhanced state where she burns even hotter than normal. I feel this is further hinted at with the two blue tags that clearly stand out on her outfit, a contrasting design point that so far has not been replicated in any other characters. As you can see in this infographic here, there are only a few characters that have highly contrasting points of color that do not match the rest of their character design. These points of color are usually used to tie in the character's eye color, such as Danjin with her jade necklace tying in her blue eyes, Roshia with these small points of yellow in her curls tying in her eye, and then kind of Carlotta and Sanhua, who have neck pieces of color that contrast with the rest of their outfit that also tie in portions of their eye. However, this is not the case for Lupa, as her eyes are yellow, not blue like the tags. And so, if she does have a transformation state where she burns blue, that will tie in closer to her color design. Finally, let's respectively analyze her tacit mark. I've long wondered if tacit mark positions have anything to do with the character's resonant abilities or awakening, or if they just get thrown in cool places. I've noticed that those that have a quote-unquote summon often have their tacit mark on their thigh, like Lumi, Baizhi, Yinlin, and Roshia. All of these characters have some kind of summon or partner, as well as having a tacit mark on their thigh. Phoebe also has a thigh tacit mark, but it's on the other thigh, so maybe she doesn't count. So far, we have no other side tacit marks, although maybe Chirsha could be a close call. I may attempt a deep dive into this topic at a later date. If I have any references, they can be found below, matching to the numbers that are appeared in the bottom right throughout the video. Additionally, the softwares I used in the creation of this video are listed below. But that's all for now. Thank you for listening to my rambling thoughts. I hope what I said today has you pondering on and excited for things to come. Thank you.